The woman who stole the moon, my grandfather used to tell this story, always in a hushed voice, always after dark. It is not a story you tell under the sun. He would sit by the fire, his face half lit by the flickering flames, and his voice, steady, grave, would draw us in like a river pulling a boat downstream. He said it happened long ago, before even his own grandfather was born. But when he spoke of it, it felt as if he had been there, as if the weight of the story had passed through the blood of our ancestors and settled into his bones. It happened in the village of Djoboro, a place where the nights were long and the stars hung heavy in the sky. Djoboro sat on the edge of the great bough forest, where the hunters whispered of spirits that walked like men, where the elders warned that some trees held memories older than time. It was a village of farmers and weavers, of griots who sang histories that even the wind had forgotten. But it was also a meeting place of many peoples. The Hausa traders from the north came with their camels loaded with kola nuts and indigo dye. The Yoruba blacksmiths worked iron and bronze, making tools and ornaments for the village. And the Igbo women, famed for their Adia cloth, bartered their textiles in the bustling market square. Each morning, the scent of roasted suya and jollof rice filled the air, mixing with the earthy aroma of the red soil. And it was the home of a woman named Sira. The woman who walked with the moon Sira was beautiful. No, not the way a flower is beautiful, soft and delicate. She was like the river after the rains, strong, impossible to ignore, demanding to be seen. When she walked through the village, the men forgot their work. The women stared after her. The children whispered her name. But it was her eyes that held people the longest. Dark, endless, as if they held the whole sky inside them. Many men asked for her hand, the Yoruba hunter Olakunle, who could shoot a moving bird from the sky, Hausa merchant Aminu, whose wealth could fill 100 homes, Igbo fisherman Chijoke, whose nets never came up empty, but Sira refused them all. I do not belong to a man, she would say, her voice light, amused. The stars are my only suitors. And so she lived alone in a round mud brick house near the river, where she wove the finest aso oke cloth in the region. People came from far away to buy her work, to admire the intricate patterns, to watch her hands move like whispers over the loom. But no one knew the secret she kept, the conversation she had with the night, for Sirah had a lover, and it was not a man. They began on the night of the Echo Festival, when the village drums played until dawn, and the air smelled of roasted maize and palm wine. That night, as the villagers danced, Tira left the celebration early. She walked alone to the river, her feet silent on the cool earth. And when she stood on the banks, staring at her reflection in the water, she whispered, "Come to me." The clouds shifted. The wind stilled. And from the sky, the moon descended. It was not sudden, not like a stone falling from a tree. No, the moon came gently, as if answering a call, as if drawn by a force older than the world itself. It bathed Sira in its glow, wrapped her in silver light. And as she reached out, her fingers grazing its surface, a voice, soft, deep, filled with longing, spoke to her. "I have watched you," the moon said. "I have waited." And Sira smiled. That was the first night. After that, she would go to the river whenever the moon was full, and the village began to notice strange things. The light seemed to linger longer over Djoboro than anywhere else. Hanging in the sky long after dawn should have chased it away. The night birds stopped singing when Sira walked by, and she grew even more beautiful, impossibly so, her skin glowing as if kissed by silver, her eyes holding secrets deeper than the oldest well. The Babalawo, the Yoruba diviner, grew uneasy. The Igbo Dibia, the seer, consulted his cowrie shells and found omens of imbalance. The Malam, the Hausa scholar, recited old verses of warning. The elders muttered prayers. The women whispered, and the marabouts watched her with wary eyes. But no one dared to speak until the moon began to disappear. At first, it was subtle, a dimming, a slight fading of the silver glow. But soon the people could not ignore it. The moon, once bright and full, shrank like a dying fire. The griot's sign of an old warning, a prophecy that spoke of a woman who would steal the night's eye, who would unravel the balance of the world. The village chief, Alma, summoned Sirah. She arrived draped in a cloth of deep blue, her head held high, her beauty undiminished, even as fear filled the air around her. Do you know what is happening to the moon? Omar asked. Sirah smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Perhaps the moon is simply tired. The chief frowned. It is not tired. It is being taken. Silence. A rustle of wind through the thatched roofs. A child's voice, distant, calling for his mother. You must return it, Sirah, Umar said, before it is too late. She stood there for a long time, then turned and walked away. That night, she went to the river again, but the moon did not come. She whispered, she called, she begged. The sky remained empty. Panic spread through Djoboro. Without the moon, the nights grew darker than they had ever been. Crops withered without its guidance. Animals grew restless, and the villagers spoke of figures moving in the shadows, things that had been kept at bay by the moon's watchful eye. The marabouts decided there was only one way to end the curse. Sirah had to be taken. They came for her at dawn, their robes billowing, their chants filling the air with heavy magic. The Egungun, the masked spirits of the ancestors, danced through the village, their presence a sign that the gods were watching. She did not run, she did not beg, she only stood, her face unreadable, her hands resting at her sides. You do not understand, she said, as they bound her wrists. But they did not listen. They carried her to the center of the village, to the baobab tree, the oldest in Djoboro, where the spirits of the ancestors were said to reside. There, they dug a hole deep into the earth and they buried her. The village held its breath. The night came, and for the first time in weeks, the moon returned, bright, full, watching. The people rejoiced, but the griot sang a warning that the moon does not forget, that the sky keeps its own memories. And some say, even now, that when the full moon hangs heavy over the Bayo forest, if you stand by the river and listen closely, you can hear a woman's voice whispering in the wind, calling, waiting for the moon to come back down.